So hello and welcome. We're feeling kind of festive here at the Center for Future Educators, which means that it must be time for our December speaker series. You're in for a real treat today as we talk with an amazing educator who overcame incredible odds as a child and pays it forward every day. The Center for Future Educators at TCNJ is an organization that works to recruit future educators from middle and high schools around the state of New Jersey through our conferences, NJFEA chapters, tomorrow's teachers courses, and our summer academy. I am your host, Dr. Jean Del Coley, the executive director of the Center for Future Educators, and this is our speaker series, where we have monthly conversations with exemplary speakers about all things education. The purpose of our speaker series is to provide future educators in New Jersey the opportunity to see the many facets of the profession, and we hope to provide some inspiration. All of our speaker series events are recorded and available to view on our website. We'll have the Q&A open later in the program, and this is a reminder that the program is being recorded and will be available on the CFE website at futureeducators.tcnj.edu next week. It takes collaboration to make the CFE and its programming possible. The center is graciously funded by the NJEA, and we are grateful that their support means that we can bring programming like this to you. Today's guest is the 21-22 New Jersey State Teacher of the Year, Theresa Maughan, a social studies teacher at East Orange STEM Academy. I won't tell you too much about her because it's probably in her presentation, but what I will tell you that Mrs. Maughan brings the past to life with her students, and her 40-year career, that's 40 with a zero, 40 years, that's a long time, as an educator has enabled her to demonstrate to her students how they can make a difference in this world. She's taught them to research using primary sources, synthesize the information in a way that's relevant to their experiences, and draw their conclusions based on factual evidence. So important as a social studies teacher, fellow social studies teacher. Each year, Maughan has her students reach beyond the classroom walls and enter many statewide and national contests, including New Jersey History Day, for those of you that have participated in that before. Their success shatters the stereotype that urban students cannot compete academically. A lifelong learner, Theresa earned a BA in History and Education from Rutgers, has a master's in Education Administration and Supervision from New Jersey City University, and is completing a second master's in History at Pace University. Theresa writes curriculum and has attended New Jersey Amistad Commission Summer Institute for more than a decade and is very proud to serve as an Amistad Scholar. I can't wait for all of you to hear her story. Last but not least, we will have our magnificent moderator, Kimberly Dickstein Hughes, who will be joining us in a little while. But for right now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Theresa Maughan. How are you this afternoon, Theresa? Great to see you here.
It's great to see you. I'm doing very well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to speak today.
It is our honor.
It's something, this group is a group that is near and dear to my heart, working with future educators. It's my pleasure. So if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to share just a small presentation which will assist in helping to get you to understand a little bit about who I am, where I work, and why I do the things that I do in my class. So just bear with me. You know, like all educators in New Jersey, we've had to navigate a brand new language since the onset of the pandemic with Zoom and Schoology and Google Classroom and everything else. So oftentimes when I begin to present, I start with social and emotional check-ins, because as educators, this is so very important for us. During the year of remote learning that I had, my district was completely remote from March of 2020 right through the entire school year up until we came back in September. And one of the most important things we could do is to make sure that we kept our pulse, took the pulse of the students that we were working with, and making sure that they were adjusting and, being able to function in that kind of an isolated environment at times. But we also need to check the pulse of our teachers. And when I do workshops with teachers, I definitely like to ask them, and, how are they feeling? So I must credit Frank from Facing History with introducing me to this slide, and it works amazingly well. And I'm not necessarily asking you to respond in the chat, but because it's a webinar, but I do want you to think for yourself, where are you at this point on December 15th, 2021? Where are you on your social and emotional duck scale? And for me, I would kind of put myself verging right now on that 4, but I'm hoping that things will I will somehow miraculously be able to reinflate myself. So my journey, as Dr. Delcote said, my journey and through Rutgers University, New Jersey City University, and I do consider myself as a lifelong learner. And as a result of that, my family looked at me like I was crazy. Why are you going to get another master's? Well, this one is purely for pleasure and passion. It is in American history. So I have 2 more courses left, the final one being my capstone. And I'm anticipating getting that done within this year. So hopefully so. And I have been an educator for 40 years. It began in Jersey City, right out of Rutgers University. And I worked for 6 years in Jersey City. 5 of those years was teaching sixth grade, I'm sorry. And 1 year was at a high school level. Both of those placements were parochial schools in Jersey City. And then in 1987, I was able to move into a position as a high school social studies teacher in the East Orange School District. And while in East Orange, I have actually worked in 3 of the high schools. My original placement was at East Orange High School, which is no longer in existence. That was then closed, turned into Cicely Tyson High School. And I moved forward to working at Campus High School, which is a 9 through 12 school. And now I am at East Orange STEM Academy, which is a 6 through 12 school. So I'm very, very much invested in my school district here in East Orange. So this has been quite an amazing year. It was not expected. And so it's quite an honor to find myself here speaking with you as the New Jersey State Teacher of the Year for 2022. And this began with being selected as the Essex County Teacher of the Year. My school district is in Essex County. In addition to that, I have this real love of my content area, and that has led me to my involvement with National History Day. So it was quite an honor to be selected as the New Jersey History Day Senior Division Teacher of the Year. So that was a very rewarding experience. And then this whole process began with being the East Orange STEM Academy Teacher of the Year. And so it is always wonderful to be recognized by your peers. In our school, the selection is done by our peers and not through our student body. So that makes it kind of interesting. So where I currently reside as a teacher is in the city of East Orange. And I wanted to give you a little bit of background to understand my community here in East Orange. So East Orange has a population, as you can see, it's almost 65,000 people. It is 83% of the population is Black, 11% Hispanic. There is about 2% who identify as white, 2% as Asian, and 2% as other. And our household income is on a median income is about $48,000 that you see. But we have a population of our community that lives below the poverty level. We have 22.8%, and we have 79% of this city reside in apartment dwellings. So there's a lot that involves in terms of property taxes and those kind of considerations that come into play with funding for the community. So my district itself has about 20 different schools. 11 of them are elementary schools. We also have some preschool programs that I didn't specifically identify here, but we have 3 middle schools. We have 3 high schools. I'm at East Orange STEM Academy. There is a performing arts school, Cicely Tyson School of Performing Arts. And there is also Campus High School, which has a lot of our career and technical education programs as well there. So for our district, we're close to about 10,000 students within the district. 48% of them are female in school district-wide, and 52% of them are male. 60.5% of the students are eligible to participate in the federal free and reduced lunch program. And we have about 3.7% of students who are English language learners. Many of our students, the demographics come from the continent of Africa. I have students here who have just recently arrived, or their families have recently arrived in East Orange from Nigeria, from Ghana, from many different nations. And we also have a population from Haiti, from the Caribbean, and from Central and South America as well. So it's quite an eclectic ethnic makeup within my school district. And specifically with the school at which I work, East Orange STEM Academy, we are a magnet school program within the school, within the district of East Orange. In order to attend STEM Academy, there's an application process that does involve entrance exam for students to take. And the same thing applies for students who want to attend Cicely Tyson, the Performing Arts School program, and they have to also go through an application process for Campus High School. Within my school, where I'm sitting right now, 93% of my students identify as Black and 5% identify as Hispanic. And here at STEM Academy, we have a 58% of our population is female and 42% of the population is male. So I've been at STEM Academy as a teacher since 2015. Prior to that, I was at Campus High School, and then prior to that at East Orange High School. So I've done the calculation, and approximately 3,400 students from the East Orange community have walked through my classroom and given me the honor of serving as their teacher. So it's amazing to me when I encounter former students. Our football team had won a championship for Group 5 in football recently. So we had a parade on Saturday, and it gave me the opportunity to reconnect with many of my former students who've moved on to professions in law enforcement. Some of them are on the school board, some of them are on our town city council. And many have chosen to enter the profession as a teacher. So that's always something that I look forward to. And so just a little bit about what we try to accomplish. The idea at our school is, our motto is learning locally and achieving globally. And as it states here, our mission is to try and provide our students with a safe and enriching learning environment. And our teachers really work and are committed to ensuring that we put forth opportunities that allow our students to branch out beyond our own school community. And in the introduction, it was mentioned, one of my personal missions has always been to allow my students to compete against students from many other school districts. And it reaffirms and it gives them a perception of themselves as being capable, more than capable, of competing against students from, say, the suburban schools. So we have entered many writing contests, essay contests through the New Jersey Bar Association. They have been finalists in many, for several years, in the competitions that were put forth. Through the New Jersey Department of Education, they also participate and were able to present their essays at a Martin Luther King celebration that was held actually in January of 2020, right before everything started to shut down. Through the Mock Trial Association, and again through the New Jersey Bar Association, they've competed in video contests, art contests, and National History Day. Let's not forget that one. So I'm very proud whenever I can see my students succeed, at these competitions. So why am I still a teacher 40 years later? It's the popular question that often comes my way. Why am I still in the classroom? As stated in the introduction, I do hold a master's degree in administration and supervision, and I have a great deal of respect for the administrators that I encounter and that I work with. But for me personally, I knew that being in the classroom would be the most rewarding place for me. And that stems a lot from my journey to get here. Initially at Rutgers University, I was intended to be a pre-law major. Specifically, my intent was to become an immigration attorney. And that was shaped by my family's own personal experience. The article that you see on the left is from the Jersey City, Jersey Journal. And the people you see in the picture, that's my dad. Those are my two younger sisters. I appear on the right in the image. And that was our dog, Roger, at the time. And it's interesting to look at the title of the article. Remember, this is from, and I always get a little mixed up myself with my math. So it's approximately about 1970. So the words we use, sometimes changes as the decades go by. At this point, my father was identified as an alien. It says, alien father of four, losing fight to remain in America. I was born in Central America. The nation at the time was called British Honduras, but currently it's known as Belize in Central America, Belize. My father had been granted a work visa. He was a printer, and he came to the United States. Contextual, if we do some contextualization as a social studies teacher, the United States was involved in the Vietnam War. And so at that time, there was this need to bring in some people to work in different industries. Unfortunately for my dad, our visa was not going to be renewed after a few years of him being here. He was told that it was not going to be renewed, that there wasn't a need for workers within his profession as a printer. And this was extremely devastating to my family. I was in about 6th or 7th grade at the time. The woman that you see in the picture on the right was my social studies teacher. And her name is, she's still here. I reconnected with her. That picture is very recent. Through this whole State Teacher of the Year experience, it enabled me to reach out to her. We had lost our connection over time. And Marilyn was my social studies teacher. She immediately launched a campaign to get my school involved, to get the community involved. There were letters that were written to our congressman. There was the articles. There were more than one article that was in the Jersey Journal. She assisted my parents in navigating, connecting with people who could help them navigate through the naturalization process. It took my family several years. We were able to stay. We were able to work through the process with an immigration lawyer, hence my desire to become an immigration attorney. And we became permanent residents of the United States, and we were granted our citizenship. And I remembered when I was a freshman at Rutgers, I felt that there was something else that I was meant to do with my life. And I reflected on the experience that I had with Marilyn Roman, my social studies teacher. And I had also encountered a wonderful history teacher. I attended St. Dominic Academy in Jersey City, and Sister Betty Ann Schultz was my history teacher, my political science teacher. And she instilled this, both of them instilled this real interest in research, this realization that things that we're learning in the classroom could be applied to authentic life experiences. And so that's why I decided to proceed, change majors, and to pursue a career as a social studies teacher, because I was hoping to be able to share and develop that kind of connection with my students that my teachers had done, and with their connection with me. So that's kind of the beginning of my journey. So with me, one of the things that's extremely important in terms of my platform, if you will, as a state teacher of the year, it's a concern for ensuring that we proceed with creating equity in our education system. What does that mean from a classroom perspective is something that we often need to address. And as future educators here, and for those of you who still are teaching within the classrooms, I think we understand that it always begins with ourselves. When I started working in East Orange and I encountered students from all over the world, and I recognized how comfortable they were with their ethnic identities, it actually helped me to reflect back on my own ethnic identity. And growing up in Jersey City, within my middle school, sitting in Mrs. Roman's classroom and the other teachers that I had, I was often the only Black student in my class. And as many immigrants, I really wanted to assimilate as quickly as I could. And I often did not, give as much merit to my ethnic history, my ethnic background. And becoming a teacher within a district that has such a variety of students from different parts of the world, I started to reflect on my own ethnic identity. And so I recommend, as all future educators, that it really does begin with you in terms of being comfortable with who you are and just being more introspective, looking for your own possible implicit biases that may exist, and wondering how those could possibly transfer into the environment that you create within your classroom. I also think as educators, we need to model equity. We need to make sure the way we interact with our peers, it's exactly the same way. We want to be able to make sure that every student is able to receive what they need in order to ensure that they are successful within our classrooms. We need to investigate the materials analyze the materials that we use within our classrooms. Make sure that they are reflective of the backgrounds of the students that sit with us on a daily basis within our classrooms. And there are ways to do that where we can look through the curriculum, we can assess the books that we incorporate into our lessons. And speaking of assessing, we should also think about multiple different ways of assessing student growth. One of the things I do at the beginning of the year is to administer, it's really not very scientific, but it serves its purpose in helping my students to take a learning style quiz. And so in the beginning of the year, I introduce them to the ideas of who may be an auditory learner, a visual learner, a kinesthetic learner, and they know those terms. I currently teach 10th graders, by the way. I'm currently teaching early US history. So my 10th graders, they come to know those terms. They come to understand what works best for them. And I try to provide my students with choice. I am a big proponent of project-based learning. And I highly recommend the use of choice menus within your classrooms. And this can be done not just in social studies, it can also be done in other disciplines. I know some people always say, you're a social studies teacher, it should come easy for you that, doing those kind of things. This all ultimately works its way to the concept of culturally responsive teaching. Making sure that we create classrooms that enable us to understand and identify what the background is that our students have. We want to invest time in the beginning of the year into learning about what I like to refer to from literature that I've read as understanding that cultural wealth that exists in the classroom and within our community. Understanding what it is that our students and their families do well. As Rita Hammond in the book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain states, that culturally responsive teaching is about being a different type of teacher who is in a relationship with our students and the content in a different way. We present it in a different way to our students and not always just going, by the cookie cutter idea of presenting a lesson in one way. We really need to make sure that we are trying to bring this lesson, present the lesson in a way that our students can actually engage in. And engagement is at the heart of all of this. I don't know if I have time to show a little video. I hope you're keeping track because I tend to lose track of how long I'm speaking. How much time do we have before we begin our Q&A sessions?
If you want to, about another 3-4 minutes, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, great. So I think this video, if it'll play, this is a video that kind of sums up what I'm about, right? As a history teacher in dealing with the concepts of culturally responsive teaching, by the way, needing teachers who reflect that diversity that we have within our classroom, who can also then help bring about these kind of lessons. So if you'll bear with me 1 minute, I'll just play this. And this is from the NJEA, so it should be pretty short. If it will play. Let's see, will it? I enjoy having my students participate in National History Day. It's just phenomenal seeing them get excited about history. A topic that's very important to me is culturally responsive teaching, helping students to find themselves within the story of our nation. Right before the pandemic set in, I had been able to have my students participate in the Hamilton Education Program. And so it was a lot of work, but they rose to the challenge. They had to research using primary source documents to create their own Hamilton-style projects. They were just amazed by the experience. Most of my students had never been to a Broadway show. So for them, this was an extremely memorable event in their lives. They always love the line about who will tell your story. So I'm trying to help them develop the skills to be able to tell their own stories. This was just some suggestions as to ways that we could bring this concept of culturally responsive teaching into our classrooms. And it all begins with actually investing the time at the beginning of the year and getting to know who we are spending the year with. I like to call my classroom a learning community. And so we develop that sense of community by having the students help to create our guidelines, actually getting to know them. I mean, many of us struggle with our students' names, and there are ways that we should invest in learning what their name is and how to pronounce their names, and just trying to get them to tell us the story of, you know, what their family is all about and what their cultural identity is about. I was explaining to Jean that I've often referred to this little yellow book, as I like to refer to it as, from Bell Hooks. And I found out today that she passed away. In fact, just like a few minutes before we even began this session. But some of the things that she wrote about, this book is from like the 1990s, and I truly try to live up to it. It's the fact that education should be a practice of freedom, and the fact that our classrooms should be an exciting place. And exciting doesn't mean chaotic. It means engagement, real engagement that's going on within our classes. And the other quote from her is where she talks about us really putting forth the effort to recognize that within our community, we want to be able to hear one another's voices. We want to recognize one another's presence. The worst thing we can do as a teacher is to have a student who feels invisible in our room, in our community. So there must be an ongoing recognition that everyone influences the classroom dynamic, that everyone contributes to it, and that we are all resources within our classrooms. And so I thank you very much for giving me that opportunity to be here with you. And let me stop sharing. Let me move myself out of the image here. And there we go. Hi.
Oh, hello.
How are you?
Hi. So I'm going to pop in real quick. We're joined now with, this is just a State Teacher of the Year love fest right here. Many of us together. So we are joined now by our moderator, Kimberly Dickstein Hughes. We are our magnificent moderator, the goddess of Greek drama, the teller of truth, and the seeker of justice, who also happens to be a teacher of English language arts at Haddonfield Memorial High School. So we have questions that have been submitted by our student officers, NJFEA student officers, but we are also taking questions from the audience. So if you'd like to put questions into the Q&A box, we can get to them as well. And without further ado, I'm turning it over to you, Kim.
Thank you. As goddess of Greek drama, I will carry that title with me into my senior English class tomorrow. Thank you so much for the very gracious introduction. Everyone, welcome to my classroom. Teresa, welcome to my classroom.
I know, welcome to mine.
This is a wonderful way to share our space. Before I get into the student questions, and I've organized them into different, so all of my students who are on this call, these are some brilliant questions today, and I've tried to chunk them according to Ms. Maughan's presentation. But I have to say, before any of this begins, is that I really do need an autograph from the Theresa Maughan on my beautiful review. I don't know if this was shown at the top. but it's beautiful. I love it. So I treasure this moment for you. I feel honored to share this space. So let's jump right in, Theresa, because we have a lot of questions from our students. And so I want to start where you began in your presentation. And our students are really interested in your story. And so you had talked about arriving from, no, it's okay. My custodian, I just waved him away. So arriving to this country around the age of 5 from Belize. Yes or yes? Yeah. And I think students are interested about like what was difficult about your move for you, for your family, beyond this whole process, but what was a difficult point that you remember?
Yeah, it's interesting because being 5 years old, there really isn't that much that I remember prior to arriving in the United States as time goes on. For my parents, my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, was already in the United States, already in Jersey City, and so were some of my father's younger siblings. He was the oldest of 9 children, and so our family had a built-in community, and so I think that made the transition a lot easier. Belize is an English-speaking nation, so there wasn't a language difficulty. I do know that when I was in either first or second grade, I was struggling, it seems, with reading because I have this amazing memory that I will cherish forever. My dad worked nights, and so he, somehow found the time to always make sure to try and check our work. And I have this memory of sitting on his lap and having him go through some reading concepts with me. So, and it was a lot easier transition for us because of having my grandmother and my aunts and my uncles there.
I think that really speaks to your commitment to community, was that you came here to a community while seeing your father juggling, right, those responsibilities and expectations and still being a teacher to you. So as I'm hearing that, and this is a question from a student, so how has your background or those memories or those experiences influenced the way that you teach and reach students and their families who might be experiencing something similar or trying to understand that?
Yeah, as I stated earlier, one of the first things that I think it's well worth the time to invest in doing, honestly, it takes up probably the first 2 weeks or so of the school year. And that's really just spending time with the students, doing things like creating identity charts, having them, share what I need to know about who they are. It's not something that will just happen by osmosis. As teachers, we have to put that effort into building this community. And it's not just teacher to student, but it's student to student. They really like learning about each other, and they will present what they're comfortable. I'm looking at the wall at these all about me posters that they created. And even though I'm a high school teacher, it's very important at a high school level for students to have that opportunity. So I knew that I kept my identity kind of closed growing up in the time period that I was growing up with, being the only Black child in my classes. And that was true until I got to high school. And then maybe there were about 3 people in my grade who were people of color. So I always didn't want to be different. And so I kept that identity closed in. But I will say this, my teachers were wonderful. They never made me feel invisible. And I think I'm eternally grateful for that. They did it in other ways. I think they were, I won 8th grade safety patrol captain. And I was like, how did I win that? And I think my teachers had a little something to do with the tallying of those scores. But, so, I do remember what I felt like, and I do want to make sure that my students don't feel invisible, at all, or
Well,
they
and
feel comfortable with themselves.
I suppose a follow-up then is like in the learning about your students, like what does that make you appreciate about your own story?
Yeah, it does. It really makes me appreciate the fact that we all can contribute to the fabric of what makes us a nation. It makes me recognize that we have stories to tell. I love oral history assignments. I really do.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I like having that opportunity to tell my story. And I want them to be able to, tell and interview people and find out what their stories are.
Yeah. I mean, today is about discovering your story and how your story brings all of our students on this call, right, closer to sharing their own, which I think is really powerful. I think in part of sharing our story, though, many times we need mentorship or someone to ask us about our stories. And so you had talked about Mrs. Roman, and who was a social studies teacher who was a huge influence in your life. Would you say that you have additional mentors or other mentors that have guided your path, and how have they guided you on your own journey?
Yeah, I mean, beginning in my own family, not many. I was the first member of my family to attend, and that's even with my dad's extended family, to attend a 4-year university. And a lot of that support actually came from a paternal uncle, my father's uncle, Uncle Angus. And he really always taught me the value of education. Professionally, I have been blessed to have had amazing coworkers who nurtured me. I mean, I started my first job 21 years old, right out of Rutgers, teaching a 6th grade class. The first day I walked into, and there were 2 other 6th grade teachers. I specialized in the social studies. Someone else did the math, someone else the science, but I also taught, ELA, I taught religion, I taught art. And I remember walking into the classroom after the bell rang and the 26 students or so looking at me. And I panicked and walked out of the room because this was my class, the reality. The other 2 teachers, Emily and Kathy, they really, took each one took an arm, kind of walked me back in there, and they were there for me. And it continues today with the value of having and the importance of having professional learning communities, PLCs at our school level with our grade level or subject matter teachers. That's the best thing we can do to keep teachers in the profession, is to let them know that they're not doing it alone.
So I suppose that, do you feel like you have paid that forward as a mentor through PLCs? And do you feel like you have impacted students like Mrs. Roman and your colleagues have impacted you?
Yeah, I'm very blessed. One of the things that I feel really proud about is that I have had pre-service student teachers, right, who I have mentored. And I've managed to maintain a close relationship to this day with a few of them. One of them I feel is like a son to me. And in addition to that, as I stated, some of my students have become teachers. When we started, when I had to start the national teacher application process, I actually asked one of my former students, who is a teacher in my school district, to write a recommendation for me. And the reading what she wrote is unbelievable. And then National History Day, the young woman that was in the picture with me, she's now a sophomore in college, and she's also an intern for Senator Menendez.
Cool.
And so we are in touch. I spoke to her just last week, and she's telling me how her semester has gone. And those are the things we want right? We want to build those relationships.
I think those relationships are key. I think that's what keeps us pursuing more in this profession, is that the connectivity is infinite, which is really exciting. And it's constantly surprising me how much I can learn from my students. And that's like the greatest part of a professional learning community and a mentorship. So I suppose that's part of our like personal questions of your background. Now our students are a little more interested in what you value as your platform as State Teacher of the Year and as a professional. So you had talked about equity and culturally responsive teaching. So in addition to diversifying the teacher pipeline, are there other areas in education that you feel are a focus of yours that happened before winning this award, or passions that you might not be able to pursue, but you think are really important to understanding you as an educator?
All of those, like I said, they're all interconnected. When we're talking about equity, we can't talk about equity without talking about culturally responsive classrooms. And we can't have culturally responsive classrooms unless we have people who are willing to do the work, right? And we want to have people in the profession who will reflect the backgrounds of the people that we have within our classes. But what's also important to me is being able to support those already in the profession. You know, as I said, I have a 40-year career, and I credit a lot of that to the concept of professional development and growth. And not every teacher is in a position at the moment to be able to attend the seminars or the workshops that I have the opportunity to. But we should still always look for ways that we can continue to grow. It's not just a cliche to talk about growth mindset at all. And as far as having people in the profession, we of course have to look at what we can do to not just bring people into the profession, but keep them in the profession. We need to reflect. I spoke to the urban school boards on Friday, and I said, I'm going to be blunt. We have to address the fact that teaching salaries need to be addressed. Absolutely. It's very important. And being an urban school teacher, I am very much interested in making sure that we continue to provide opportunities for our urban school district students to have those opportunities for scholarships and college admissions, and to keep a connection with them, to make sure, because kids will get into college, but they don't always finish. So we want to ensure that we can do whatever we want. And that concept of cultural wealth plays into this as well. At a college level, there are strengths that can be utilized that kids come to the campus with that can help them to stay the course.
So one of the questions from the students that I think really speaks to what you are talking about in the moment, some students get frustrated with the current climate of education, or whether that's from like student debt relief or the salary scale, whatever it may be, that is a barrier. And so one of the questions that the students have would be like, what would you say directly? And I know you've said a lot of things, but if you had to pick what you would say to those who question the value of continuing their studies and education.
Yeah, it's challenging. I would say, and this is what I say all the time to teachers, ours is not an easy profession. There are so many levels and tiers to what we do. And so I encourage you to look within yourself, make sure it is something that you feel that you'd like to continue doing. And my daughter is a teacher. So I recognize the challenges just addressing the praxis exams. Their student debt. Trust me, my children graduated with a bit of student debt as well. So we have a lot of work ahead of us that we need to do in order to let others see that this is a good option. And I don't take it lightly. I'm not Pollyanna. I recognize all of the day-to-day struggles that we're dealing with. And we're living in a pandemic, and we see all of this magnified right now with how much the teachers are carrying on their shoulders.
And it has exacerbated what we had already known, but we're maybe blind to or willfully ignoring. And now I think that people have their eyes on it, right? You can quote, you probably know Hamilton better than I do. People are, I'm misquoting Hamilton now on a recording, but the world has their eyes on you, or something along those lines.
History has its eyes on
right? History has, thank you very much. Long teaching day. But this idea is, history has their eyes on us. Like, I think as educators, like, we have the possibility of changing the future, and really by investing in the present. And so I think it's important for future educators to hear that, both a pragmatic angle and also a positive one, and that there are educators advocating for you. So there were a lot of questions here that you've already answered about New Jersey History Day and the impact on your students. How has it been beneficial for you, Theresa, History Day?
It teaches amazing, right behind me. You see that sign, critical thinking skills. It's an authentic experience because students can select the areas of interest. There is a theme every year. This year it's debate and diplomacy. But if I have students who are interested at a STEM school, I have students that are interested in science. So some students are researching about Henrietta Lacks. I had introduced them to a book I read this summer, Radium Girls, that actually the events took place in New Jersey, a good part of it around World War I. So depending on what their interests, remember we talk about choice.
Yeah.
And National History Day gives choice. I don't do it as it was never a club in my school. I did it at first just as an individual mentor to certain students, but now we've infused it into our curriculum. And so we can.
I'm going to stop you there. I want to know, I'm going to push you, because I think educators, oftentimes we fall into like how it benefits our students. How has participating in New Jersey History Day made you better? Like, you personally, what has it done for you? I think something I always think about professional learning is that I think all the time, like, what it'll do for my students, but how does this benefit you, Theresa?
Well, I'm a history geek. I get to play in the sandbox of what I love doing. I mean,
yes.
it goes without saying, but it's also benefited me in that it just allows me to have others find joy in research.
Yes.
And they can do that. And so my reward is, through what my students are able to accomplish.
Yeah. I have two very quick questions for you before we hand the program over. And unfortunately, we didn't get to all of the questions, but you covered so many of them in your talk. And I know what you mean by history geek. I'm a Shakespeare geek, and all of my professional learning really brings me closer to that and creates community with my students. If your students were to describe you in 3 words, this is a student question, what would those 3 words be?
Fair. I hope they see me as fair, because I try very, very hard to do that. I think, honestly, some of them would say I'm corny, because I tend to be, I'm better, I'm more comfortable in my classroom with my students than if I was at a social engagement. Yeah. I like to perform for my students, so I think they would mention that. And I really think that I hope that they see me as caring, compassionate, that type of thing. So it's important for me to know that they recognize that I try very hard to build that relationship with them.
And I think that answers the student's final question about how you want to be remembered. And I think that's a beautiful way to want to be remembered.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As someone who helped them to do the best that they could, and recognize their own strengths is really how I want to be remembered.
And help them feel seen, just like folks did that.
Not invisible. Absolutely.
That's really powerful. And I could feel that in just meeting you in person, Theresa, and through the screen. And so thank you so much for your time. Your answers were so comprehensive and there was so much good in everything that I think anyone on this call could take away what they needed for themselves to feel ready and prepared to pursue education. So
And I hope they do.
And I think that after watching this whole speaker series, everyone has a path in, which is really exciting.
So we have our set of rapid fire questions that we give every guest who comes on our show, just so we make sure we have a baseline of common information that we collect from everyone. So are you ready?
Yes.
Don't think too hard about these, just throw an answer out there. Okay, what's your favorite word?
Respect.
What's your least favorite word?
Shut up.
If you could have any superhero power, what would it be?
That's tough. Probably I'd like to fly.
Okay. What was your favorite subject when you were at school?
History.
What subject or grade level do you wish that you taught?
I'm happy. High school. Absolutely high school level. I did sixth grade for 5 years, but I am a high school content specialist.
I hear you. All right. So then what subject or grade level would you not want to teach?
Oh, I respect elementary school teachers. My daughter had initially started with the lower grade levels. I was like, how are you doing that? Oh, no elementary school for me.
Mm-hmm. What sound or noise do you love?
Water. I love the ocean. I love the sound of water.
Belize thing, right? What sound or noise do you hate?
Car horns, definitely, especially when I'm driving.
Oh yeah, yeah. If someone were to play you in a movie version of your life, who would you want it to be?
Angela Bassett.
Ooh, oh, that'd be a good one. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, this is easy. I would love to have been a library media specialist. It just goes hand in hand with my love of research and primary sources. Absolutely.
Okay. And final question, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Let me take you to your parents.
Oh.
Because they both passed away in 2015. So absolutely, that's what I'd like to hear.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Theresa. You have been a wonderful, wonderful guest today. I told you the time flies on this program. It just moves really quickly. So until we see you next year, please take care of yourselves and each other. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you,
everybody.